Welcome to the Millionaire University podcast. I'm your host, Brien Gearin, back in the saddle with you today. And on this edition of the MU Pod, I'm joined by Patrick Lange. He's the owner of Business Modification Group, where they specialize as a business broker, helping people buy and sell heating and air conditioning companies across the country. And guys, this guy, he has sold over 140 businesses. Patrick, I believe you said the leading, like nobody does this more at a higher volume than you do. So Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited, man, because this is somewhat up my alley. Because in my marketing company, we deal with a lot of home service providers, so I'm very familiar with working with businesses in the trades, and it's a huge pleasure for us. So I'm sure, obviously, it's a big pleasure for you to help these business owners or buyers and sellers basically get together and do a deal. So we're going to talk all about that today. I'm super stoked to get into the details and the nitty gritty on this. And you are clearly the expert for that. That's why we have you here. But first, let's do a quick, let's get some quick context. How did you get to where you are? And how did you get to the point of selling 140 businesses?
Yeah, it's crazy, Brian. So my path meandered. I've been a business broker for a number of years and sold everything: bars, restaurants, gas stations, flower shops, you name it. I sold it. And a little over 8 years ago, I believe, I bought one of my listings. So I listed a heating and air company for sale. I'm based in the state of Florida. I don't know a husband dumb enough to tell his wife in the summertime in Florida is not fixing the air conditioning. So I thought it was an incredible business. I love businesses with barriers to entry. So you needed licensing. So to me, it helps control price competition. So, so I bought it and ran it for 2 years and realized I didn't belong running a heating and air company, and I missed the business brokerage world. So I went to go sell it, and I couldn't find a lot of information on selling the company my size. So we were a smaller company, under $2 million in sales. And I found if you were doing 20 or $30 million, buyers were lining up to help you. But if you were doing a million to say $3 or $4 million, it was challenging to find any information. So I thought, if as a broker I'm struggling, what is a guy or a girl who's for the last 20 years has fixed air conditioners and they're getting ready to sell and retire? They really must be struggling. So my son and daughter-in-law actually bought me out. So they run my heating and air company today. My office, up until a few months ago, had been in their office, so they got my unsolicited advice, which I'm sure they were thrilled with. And so I thought, let me switch my practice to see if I could help these people. And at first, as I mentioned, I'm based in Florida. I sold some in Florida, then Florida, Georgia, then Southeast, and then we became nationwide. And so the goal to the getting to 140 started with my own. So I've kind of been in people's shoes, both buying and selling, and we've been fortunate to help a lot of people along the way.
That's awesome. What a cool story. And you said your son and daughter bought out and run the business now. So you do technically, or you're within the family, you have an HVAC company that is in operation. And I love that you mentioned how you first bought it out and realized this isn't for me. I shouldn't be the one running this company. I think that takes a lot, in the entrepreneur world for entrepreneurs to understand that it's okay to realize that what you just did might not be right for you after some hard knocks and learning with it, right? But you find a way and ended up selling it to your son and daughter. So that's awesome. Um, so we're going to cover a lot today, but I want to lead with the fact that your business is booming because the boomers, pun intended. There's like I saw a stat, or maybe it was on Cody Sanchez or something, where it's like 10,000 baby boomers are retiring like every day these days, and it's like 20 or 30% of them own a business. That is a lot of businesses on a weekly, monthly basis, yearly basis that are either shuttering, or maybe they are, there's no succession plan, or at the end of the day, the majority of them might just close when they're perfectly sellable businesses. Maybe not perfectly sellable, but sellable, right? So the opportunity in this space is massive, as we know, as evidenced by your statistics here. But what does it look like moving forward in terms of businesses that are coming available? Like, is this an absolutely massive market, or are we just on the precipice of this becoming a huge opportunity zone?
You know, in the industry, in the business brokerage world, that's discussed all the time. They call it the silver tsunami, right? There's all these people that are getting to that retirement age. And I think in different industries, you're seeing it at different stages. I think there's a lot of people, right, who didn't build great businesses. They had good jobs, they had high paying jobs, they're the entire business, so there's not a lot to sell. There's other people who built incredible businesses that has staff and people and systems. And so I think that changes. I think specifically for the trades became attractive to financial buyers, private equity groups, and other things. And then COVID happened, and I think it really magnified that, right? All these companies are shutting down. Everybody's at home and realizing their air conditioner's not working as well as they thought it was, or their plumbing's leaking, or something's going on. And so it really highlighted that, hey, there's a lot of people in the trades that are making a lot of money when everybody else is shut down sitting at home. And a lot of people came to the realization that I did. Once again, there's not a lot of husbands telling their wives they're not fixing the air conditioner in the summer, and up north they're not telling each other they're not fixing the heater in the winter. And so it's a fairly recession resistant business. And I think air conditioning used to be a luxury in many parts of the country, and now it's a need. And you start looking at the older population you were talking about, hospitals, nursing homes, those types of things. They need air. They don't have an option. Restaurants, movie theaters that are still in existence, they need air, right? So there's a consistent demand for a well-run company, and I think that trickles over into other industries as well. Once again, I've sold kind of them all, but really in the trades, it definitely shines through.
I'm gonna go down a bit of a rabbit hole here. You mentioned making a business sellable. What makes specifically a trades business sellable as opposed to, like you said, you could be a seven figure business, but you may have just created yourself a job where your title is owner, as opposed to a business that's sellable.
Yeah, there's four things I really preach consistently to the trades, to people about growing a business to sell. And the first one is getting yourself out of the van or out of the truck or out of the business. I tell them, if every Google review I see has your name on it, then it's probably not a great business. If you're the best CSR customer service person, if you're the best salesperson, if you're the best technician, if you're the best installer your company has, you have a job, not a business. Now, oftentimes it's a good paying job, right? Making $100,000, $200,000 a year, so it's certainly nothing to be ashamed of. But I never have a buyer call me and say, "Hey, I want to work 14 hours in the field and then go home and do paperwork for 5 hours." That's not the dream of a buyer's business. So that's the first thing, getting yourself out of the way. We also preach a business built on service and repair, staying away from new construction. Lots of new construction happening all over the country. But from a buyer's perspective, it's a risky part of the business and one they're not looking for. They're looking for repeat revenue. And building a new house is not repeat, right? You've been fortunate. You mentioned when we started the call, just moved into your new house, but it's been 7 years, I think you had said. So it's not something you do every single year. But turning your air conditioner on and off is something you do every single day. And so there's an opportunity for repeat revenue. Third thing is cleaning up your books, right? Too many people treat their business like it's their personal checking account. I often meet with sellers, and I'll ask them the numbers of their business, and they'll tell me their numbers, and I'll say, "Great, send me your tax return." And when they send me the tax return, it looks like a completely different business. I think they sent me the wrong documents. And everybody says, wink, wink, the benefit of owning a business is to save money on taxes. Well, I can tell you, running a business to save money on taxes and running a business to maximize sale price are two different businesses. Sure, as being self-employed, there's opportunities to minimize the tax exposure. But if you're building a business to sell, hiding profits is not going to maximize that value. Um, and then taking care of your customers, and that's where your kind of job comes in. Obviously, we want to see strong Google reviews. We want to see an online presence. We want to see some marketing exposure taking place. Many of the people I meet with that are selling spend zero on marketing. Phone rings more than they can get to because they're looking at the finish line, not the starting point. And a buyer wants to see a business with growth opportunities. And if you've been stagnant or going down for the last 5 years, that's not super attractive. So focusing on those four things is key, I think. And that's not necessarily just with the trades, that's with any business, right? If you're looking at businesses across, if you put yourself in a buyer's shoes, what are you looking to buy? And I tell sellers, pretend you're a buyer. What would you pay for your business today? And many of them are like, well, I wouldn't pay anything for it. And neither is a buyer. And so looking at it from the lens of a buyer makes it much easier to build a sellable business.
You mentioned that a stagnant business is not an attractive target. Um, playing devil's advocate, could a stagnant business, let's say you've been between 1 million and 1.3 million for the last 6 years, right? You're kind of right towing that line, not too down, not definitely not too up. Why, presuming that the house is in order, but it's one of those companies where they just don't do any marketing. Is that an opportunity or is that a red flag? Because I look at it as, well, maybe they haven't really done anything. And let's say the buyer has a prowess in marketing. We could take this business, we could get it at a really good price because they've been stagnant and because maybe there's a few other problems that we need to fix. But if we just install our system, we could take this from 1.2 to 2.2 quickly. How do you view that?
So now we were talking initially about advising a seller, what they should do to grow their business and increase value. If I'm a buyer, I preach to buyers consistently, buy a heating and air company doing under $2 million in sales. To me, the sweet spot as a buyer is between 1 to 2 million. Typically at 1 million, the seller has to get out of the van, right? If they're doing $1 million in sales, he or she can't be doing it on their own. So if you buy too small, there's a direct relationship to the customer and the owner. They call the owner Sunday night at 8 o'clock. He answers the phone. He's going to come over and fix their unit. So the minute he sells, that customer typically is a cheap customer because that business owner can be cheaper. It doesn't have any overhead, doesn't have to charge as much. It can make a lot of money. That customer is used to being cheap and used to being able to talk to the owner. If you're looking at a business that's scalable, you need to get the owner out of the way, really. And so buying under 1 million, I think, exposes you to that more needy client, more needy customer, and one that is used to having their hand held by the owner. From 1 million to 2 million, my experience has been, one, they've gotten themselves out of the way. They put some systems or some people in place. They're charging a higher figure. They're charging higher rates. So when you come in, if you have to raise rates, it's not like ripping a Band-Aid off. It's just small incremental things. And so I think there's great opportunities there. To me, that 1 to 2 million has the most low-hanging fruit of all the businesses you're going to buy. They have the least buyer competition. Private equity is not trying to buy them. And if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do a little work, it is much easier, in my opinion, to take a heating and air company from 2 million in sales to 4 million than it is from 10 million to 20 million. And so at that under $2 million level, to make it grow faster, every person you're hiring generates revenue. You're hiring a technician, you're hiring an installer. When they leave the shop, they're coming back with more money than they left with. So that's an incredible opportunity. You buy bigger companies and you're investing more in management, that's squeezing margins and monitoring people, that not necessarily bringing in revenue. So from a buyer's perspective, incredible opportunity, low hanging fruit, often don't do any marketing whatsoever. Don't even go back and market to their existing customer base. They're often solely repair versus replacement, and so there's a lot of replacement opportunities. They never talk about indoor air quality or increased filtration or all these other things that a lot of customers are looking for. They often don't talk about maintenance agreements because they don't have the opportunity to get to them. They're too busy to even do a maintenance agreement. They're typically turning down more work than they're taking on because they don't want to hire and train. There's all sorts of opportunities, in my opinion, in that range. So great point. 100% agree with you.
So in your business, you're working with buyers and sellers, right? So let's dig into that a little bit. Do you kind of have like a stable of people that are interested in selling and or on the market, and then do you also have buyers that come to you? So you are the broker for both parties. Is that how your operation works?
Yeah, I mean, I do, because the market has been so strong, I do more seller work. I do more taking listings to market just because listings have been harder to come by than buyers in the last few years. There's been so many buyers in the marketplace. The other part to that is a buyer comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to buy something in Cincinnati." I call up a bunch of people in Cincinnati and say, "Would you consider selling?" I bring them back to you and say, "Brien, here's 5 that are willing to sell," and you don't like them. Now the seller's mad at you and me. It's much easier for you to come to me and say, "Hey, I'm looking for something in Cincinnati." We go to Cincinnati and get a few listings and come back and say, "Here's 3 or 4 to pick from. Do they make sense?" And you say yes or no. If they're no, then we'll go to market and sell them. So because of the strength that the market has been, that's really our approach. When I first started selling heating and air 6 years ago, the market wasn't as strong. And so it was easier to reach out from a buy side, and not ruffle feathers and not hurt people's feelings. And there's so many buyers in the marketplace. These private equity groups have guys on the phone all day long calling people saying, I want to buy your business, I want to buy your business, emailing them, direct mailing them. So it's harder to stand out in the marketplace now as a buyer.
So how do you, I guess, how do you find the right target? So let's say in that scenario you just mentioned, you say we go to Cincinnati when we generate listings. How do you find the businesses that you think are good targets for selling? And then what are those conversations like? Like, is this something that can happen within a month or two, or is this like it takes us a few months to actually find interested business owners that are willing to sell in any given area?
So it really, I hate to say it, but it depends. So um, I've got the right guy on the show with me. I spend a ridiculous amount of money on marketing. We we write articles for industry publications. I speak at every event we can. I go to every trade show. I have a YouTube channel with probably 80 videos with 500,000 views about buying and selling heating and air. So we do everything we can to be in front of them. So when the time is right, they raise their hand, they come to us. That also helps us because of that constant being in the market. When we do a direct mail to a specific area or we do phone calls to an area, hopefully there's some brand recognition where they say, hey, I've read your articles, I've seen your videos, I met you at the trade show, my friend sold with you. So the community, although there's a lot of heating and air companies out there, it's a fairly tight knit community. And so because of the things we've been doing for the over the years, we try to be top of mind um, in doing that. So we're not a stranger when they get a piece or when they get something. So it's a multi-pronged approach, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I point that out because what you just explained applies to every business in every industry. That part of the marketing where when you make a concerted effort to be, I don't want to say everywhere, but in as many places as you possibly can, where your buyers hang out, where your audience hangs out. Now, over time, this isn't something that happens overnight, right? This is the quote unquote content game that people talk about that a lot of people feel like they don't have time to do or know how to do. It's just a matter of putting your knowledge on blast and being in the right places, getting on stages, getting on podcasts like you're doing here today. These are all things that businesses of any stripes, the owners, the people within the business need to be doing because, like you said, especially I imagine in your niche, you need to be known as credible. You need to be known as the authority. And if you're not getting on stages, if you're not doing podcasts, if you're not producing videos, if you're not writing for industry publications, you're just another guy calling them, off the whim, hoping that you're going to get a deal from them. And business owners are just, blinders on, right? Like that type of stuff. I get hit up all the time for my business for multiple things, and it's just blinders. But if I were to be getting a message from someone who I know is an industry expert, and whether it's a direct mail or an email or a phone call, but I've seen their stuff. Now I feel special. I'm like, oh, that guy's reaching out to me, right? Like, so that's I wanted to make sure we pointed out because that's a massive point for any business, any of you entrepreneurs, business owners out there listening. That's a massive point. So, um, that's
Changed my
that's a great
business when
place
I
to be.
did that. I mean, just to prove, what you're talking about. When I first got in the industry, there wasn't the competition. We could do a direct mail piece to the state of Florida, every licensed contractor, and I'd get 20, 25 phone calls. Now I could do that same direct mail piece to the state of Florida and get none, just because there's so much disruption in the marketplace and so much vying
Hmm.
for their attention. And so when we made the concerted effort to try to be in all the channels my people are in, it changed my business, right? I mean, once again, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on every group chat, I'm answering those things, I'm on every podcast that I can be in. And part of it for me is the giving back, right? I one of my videos, one of my most watched videos is called Your Baby's Ugly. And it's not done as a joke, but for most business owners, yourself included, I'm certain, Brian, your business is your baby, right? You spend your
Hmm.
entire life or a large part of your life building this businesses. I think of my business and my business in the past. My kids were raised in the office. That's how I was known in the community. I mean, everything was about that business. And so now I sit down at a kitchen table with a husband and wife who are 70 years old, and we talk about their business, they give me their numbers, and I've got to say, hey, your business has no value. Nobody wants what you've built. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it'll rip your heart out, right? You
Hmm.
do that. If you do it with somebody who's 40 years old, well, hey, shame on you, fix it. You've got plenty of time, you've got plenty of runway, go back and make it right. There's a lot of resources out there. But when they're 70, you can't say regroup your business, start all over again, recreate the last 30 years you've done it wrong. And so kind of my mission of giving back is self-serving because I don't want to have those conversations 5 years from now, right? And most of those people said I didn't know. I didn't know who to ask. I didn't know where to go. The reality is most of my clients have never sold a business. Most of my clients, their business is their largest asset. I've seen studies that said most business owners, 80 to 90% of their wealth is tied up in their business. And they went to a seminar, they went to a trade show, they read an article and said, my business is worth X times. So automatically they think my business is worth that. They didn't know who to talk to. They can't ask their competitors. They can't ask their friends because they're not business owners. Often being a business owner, you're a lone person on an island, right? You don't know who to talk to. You don't know who to ask. And so they just spent the last 30 years getting them going to work, building what they thought was going to be their retirement. Now I sit at the kitchen table and say, you've done it wrong. The value of your vans is all you've got in value in your business, and it's horrible. So I do these things, these podcasts, other podcasts, speak at industry events, write articles, do all those things so I can stop having that conversation. And as a result, it serves as marketing as well, right? Because I'm in those places, so it's double, it's a double benefit for me. But the reality is, too many business owners today, and if for all the business owners watching today, don't have a clue what their business is worth. And so I consistently preach, we do it for the trades, but there's a lot of other brokers who do it for other things. Get a valuation done. There's brokers, good brokers all over the country that specialize in whatever industry or niche that you're in that can say, hey, here's what your business is worth. So find it out now so you can say, hey, what is it going to need to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Because so you have a plan. Don't
Hmm.
just get up and go to work and wake up one day and say, okay, I'm 65, I want to retire. Call me, and then I have to say, hey, you've done it wrong. Because
Right.
so I list probably two companies a month on average, and I probably look at 20 sets of tax returns a month. So 18 people, I have to say your business is not sellable, or it's not sellable for what you think it's worth.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm one broker. So multiply that by the thousands of brokers across the country, and that conversation is being had every day.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I can imagine for you, that's like, you know, you're sitting there and they've been working on this for 30 and 40 years. And they're probably a lot of them. I've worked with a lot of folks in that generation where they're set in their ways. Like, and hey, we know our business is worth $4 million at a sale. And then you come in, and it's like, oh, hey, Patrick said that we're not worth squat, or it's about the value of our vans, maybe $100,000. That would
Yep.
be crushing. So
It is.
I love that you said that that's something where it's part of your giving back is going out and educating and just sharing your knowledge with the market, with business owners, so that they know that, hey, hopefully, if they have time to go and make corrections, or maybe it's a 3 to 5 year span where, okay, maybe we're not going to sell next year. Let's plan to sell in 3 or 4 years, and let's go implement these changes that Patrick recommended or that we learned from Patrick, and then we can go have that discussion. So that makes your job easier. It helps them out, and now in a few years they are sellable, right? It's good giving back.
Everyone wins, right? At the end of the
Everyone
day,
wins.
I'm able to sell a business for a higher dollar figure, so the seller gets more money and gets paid for what they've built. I get a bigger commission, right? Because I
Hmm.
get paid my commission. So I
Right.
win in that environment, as opposed to saying, go put your vans on Facebook Marketplace and see what you can get for them, and tell your employees that they don't have a job anymore. I mean, it's that and that happens way too often. When I was a general broker, especially, there's so many business owners that have built businesses wrong and they're just exhausted, right? Running a business is tiring, especially one that demands a lot out of you. And my biggest competition was them closing down. They could, you owned a restaurant, sell the stuff that's inside the restaurant, close down and walk away because it was worth more than dealing with the broker, dealing with buyers, selling it, paying the taxes, paying commissions, doing all those things. It was the better alternative. And that's not what the American dream should be about building a business. And I'm of the belief, and being a broker's really proven this to me over and over again, you can make money doing anything, right? At the end of the day, if you have a good product or service, the ability to market it and get it in front of the right people and do a good job. I have sold businesses where people were making money doing things I never dreamed of. I sold a business there was a recycling guy who recycled propane tanks. So you go to most places, and most recycling places won't take a propane tank because if they go to crush it, it'll blow up and all these other things. His business was riding around to these garages and other places getting the propane tanks. He would take that most of them had propane in them and they didn't know it. He would take the propane out of them, and everything he owned ran on it. His trucks, his crushing equipment, his entire operation ran on free propane that he got from these propane tanks that he took out, and they paid him to come get the propane tanks. So they didn't have anything to do with them. So they would pay him to come pick up the propane tanks. He would get paid for doing it. Then he would crush them, take all the propane out, run all his equipment on it, crush them, and then sell the metal to recycling and get paid again. So he was getting paid twice on everything he did. And it ran out. Now, when he called me and said, I have a propane recycling business, I thought, oh, this is going to be a beaut. And, and I live in Florida. There's a place I see that does a lot of volume in Ocala's huge in horses, where they come and scrape up manure out of horse stalls. I mean, you can make money doing anything,
Hmm.
and being a broker has proven that to me. And so I think just some people get it wrong and don't understand building a business to sell, and that's what we're here for.
Isn't that the beauty of entrepreneurship though? You can literally within the bounds or without of the bounds of your imagination, you can make money doing anything. There's nowadays there are companies that go around to houses and pick up the owner's dog poop. Like there's literally like crap picking up companies that
So
come
funny you
and
said that. We did a set of tax returns yesterday, and he said, I have personal expenses in the business. What is it? And one of this was this company, and I don't even remember what the name of the company was, Poop Trooper or something like that.
yeah.
And and I'm like, what is that? And I look up the company, and he pays somebody to come to his yard to pick up his dog poop. And,
Yeah.
and I'm and I looked up the company, and they're a fairly large company picking up dog
Yeah.
poop. So yeah, I
This
think there's an incredible opportunity, but also if you own the poop picking up company and you're the only guy picking up poop, it probably makes for a long day, and you probably
right.
don't make money. You only can pick up so much poop, but it's about scale and marketing and all these other things. And so I think it's no different in the trades or anything additional, right? At the end of the
Right.
day, um, and and I really believe that. I think that we fortunate to live in the country that we do, and there's opportunities that exist all over the place if you just take a little time and learn about them. That I meet a lot of people. I didn't know, and I'm rambling, but I didn't know you could make the money that you make in the trades, right?
Yeah.
Before I got in the trades, I can't tell you how many companies that I've sold over 6 years that these people are millionaires, multi-millionaires, and they ran small, relatively quiet blue collar businesses just taking care
Yeah.
of people. Incredible. I love it.
Yeah. That is, and that's one of the coolest things I love about the trades is, growing up, you would think, oh, it's the plumber. It's like butt crack guy that's coming to fix the toilet. But nowadays, and I especially think in the younger generations now, they're realizing the value in the trades and being in the trades and then possibly owning a trades business because it is so needed. People these days are willing to pay for anything to get done if they don't have to do it. And you can be like you're it's freshly minting millionaires every day. Like and people it's insane. So yeah, I'm on board with you on that one. That's why I love working with the trades because there's so much opportunity in it.
Right. And great
Um
people. I mean,
and
that's the
great
beauty of
people.
it too. These people that
Right.
I'm helping sell businesses for have been pillars of their community, supported every little league team, have long-term employees, raised their family, done a great job. It's an incredible opportunity.
And it's the backbone of the American economy, right? Small business in general, but especially those in the 1 to 5, 1 to 10 million range. I would say an ignored area of the economy, but it is the backbone of the economy. Because if all these, if 50% of these businesses washed out overnight, there'd be a massive hit to the macro level of our economy. Like it's that important. So I know I'm rambling with you here, but it's that important, and that's why it's so incredible and an opportunity, not only an opportunity, but important for these businesses to stay in existence rather than to just shutter. And that's what makes your job so important as well. So, I want to ask you about valuating these businesses. How do you go in and evaluate their worth? I realize this might be a loaded question, but what are the pillars of going in and checking out a business and understanding what the value is, and how do you arrive at that? Especially knowing a few of the things we covered, whether it's if the business owner is too involved or not involved, or what are some of the pillars of that when you go in and evaluate a business?
Yeah, so the base of the business is going to be gross sales and net income, right? I mean, the business is typically going to sell on a multiple of that net income level. And so the bigger the business, the potential higher that multiple is going to be, in addition to the higher price, just because it's a bigger business. It all opens you up to more buyers. Um, Smaller company in the trade, using the trades as an example first, if it's a real small company and the owner's doing a lot of the work, potentially you, who may not be able to fix an air conditioner, wouldn't be a great fit for that business because if the owner leaves, you can't fix an air conditioner. And what did you buy? So as it gets bigger and there's more level of people, it becomes more attractive. Is one thing. The type of business, is it commercial versus residential, has an impact on pricing? Is it service, repair, replacement, or is it new construction, exposure, and project-based work, has an impact on that pricing? And location, right? I'm in Florida. I think last year they came out and said 1,000 people a day moved to the state of Florida. So it's a market that's growing rapidly and needs a lot of service. And as a result, there's a lot of buyers coming there. I sell companies all over the country, and in certain markets where people are leaving the state, not moving there, it's a harder market to sell in. So it has an impact on valuation. And so that business is going to sell in a range. Smaller companies under $2 million is probably going to be 2 to 3 times that multiple. As that grows up, it could go 3 to 5, get to $10 million in sales. It could be potentially 10 times, multiple of that figure. And so based on those other factors is going to dictate where in that range your business is going to end up. Google reviews, maintenance agreements, all those things play into there. And so it will determine where in that range you'll end up. I know it's kind of vague, but does that answer your
Yeah.
question?
No, absolutely. But it also prompts another one here. When you're evaluating these businesses, what about you can always talk about the marketing and the things, the technology they use, yada yada. But how do you bring in the human factor to this in terms of the employees that work at that business presently, and then how does that affect the valuation? Like, do you go in and do like employee interviews? I mean, because it commonly, I'm sure, when a business gets bought out, there's X amount of employees who will end up leaving in the near term or the soon, right? How does that affect the valuation? Does it affect the evaluation, and what does that look like?
Yeah, and so it does. I mean, the short answer, it does affect the valuation. And so part of the problem with the trade specifically, and most businesses are struggling, is finding quality help, right? There's
Hmm.
more people retiring out of the trades that are entering the trades currently. Schools have taken out shop classes. We're not preaching the trades. It's college, 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 and it's not trade school. Um, and so that's had a drastic impact on the trades, and it's allowed people in the trades. I know a lot of technicians making $150,000 a year, and so it creates an opportunity if you're in it. If you own a company, attracting and retaining talent is the biggest problem facing the industry. Making the phone ring typically isn't. There's a lot of people who need service and repair, but it's finding somebody who can service and repair that customer stuff is the biggest challenge. So we look at employee tenure plays a big impact. There's a lot of employees that are chasing. We call it chasing the shiny nickel or the shiny ladder. They're trying to find the next company that they want to go to make 5 cents more an hour, or drive a fancier van, or whatever the case may be. And so if you have 10 employees and they've been with you for less than a year, you've got a 20-year-old business. Well, buyer's going to be nervous about that. There's not tenure. You've got a 20-year-old business and the average person's been there 5 to 10 years. Well, they're going to feel comfortable. They're going to stay. We typically do not have the buyers get to talk to the employees, because typically in a transaction, the employees don't know it's for sale. And the reason is most employees, if they heard, hey, the boss is selling, they would automatically go to panic mode. I'm going to lose my job. Everything's going to end up
Hmm.
bad. And they leave for no reason. So we try to do it where when we make the announcement, that the buyer's there and the buyer can say the truth. Hey, I'm buying the business because of you, right? If you have good employees in place, they're going to be the Google reviews, they're going to be doing the work, they're going to have the customer relationship, and that's in essence what a buyer's buying. And so they get to tell them that, hey, we're buying it because of you. We want you to stay. We want you to be here. We're going to give you better benefits, better insurance, whatever the case may be that they're bringing to the table. And so that's the scariest part, right? The employees are the only people involved in the transaction that don't have a say in it, right? They're kind of the pawn in the game, and we don't tell them to protect themselves oftentimes. But you're right, people will leave, right? At the end of the day, if I work for you, I may work for you because I like you, not necessarily because I like the company or I like the customers or I like anything else. You and I have a relationship, so I stay there. When you sell, I could say, hey, I've been getting job offers for 6 years. I've never taken them because I like you. You're not there anymore. I may take one of those offers. So there's an element of risk there. And but there's also, I've seen it where when the seller is explaining to the employees to the new owner, the buyer, they'll say, "Oh, Jack's a great guy. He's been with me forever. He should be the next general manager. He's fantastic. He's loyal. He's all these things." But Steve, you may consider firing Steve. He's not great. We sell the business. I call 6 months later to the new owner and say, "Hey, how are things working out? What's going on?" They're like, "Oh, you remember Jack he bragged about?" Yeah. Well, Jack had been moonlighting on the side and been stealing from the company for the last 10 years. Steve's the new GM. He's fantastic. He's great. So, so everybody has a different perspective, right? And a different relationship. And oftentimes that that relationship is different with the new owner. And so what may have not been a great employee turns out to be an incredible one because maybe they weren't treated the way they wanted to be treated, or maybe they felt like they were slighted for one reason or another, or they didn't get training that they wanted. There's all sorts of things that go into employee happiness, and everybody treats it differently. But certainly the most important part of the transaction are the people at the end of the day.
Hmm. And is that, would you say people are the hardest part of any transaction, or are there any other items that we would consider the hardest part?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it's a financial transaction, right? So the dollars and cents have to make sense for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, to me, that's the easiest part of the deal, and most people make it the hardest part. If a seller knows what the business is worth and what it has to sell for, it makes accepting an offer easy or not. If they don't know, or they think it's worth something that it's not, then it becomes very challenging. But if they have a valuation, they know what it's worth, then it's all the other part of the deal that make the deal more complicated. And most sellers, when I ask them what's important in the transaction, certainly the financial part, once that box checked, they're okay, but that their people are taken care of, right? Most of these people, are still going to live in the same town, go to the same church, shop at the same grocery store, and they don't want to have to hide their face thinking, "Oh, I sold my business to a jerk who ran everybody off and didn't treat our customers good." So
Hmm.
their reputation is important. At the end of the day, it's their baby, right? We talked about that earlier, and they want to make sure that they're passing their baby off to somebody who's going to take care of their legacy, and that's important to people, and we try to make sure it's a good match when we're doing that.
Do you deal with a lot of creative financing for these deals, or is it pretty straightforward?
Yep. So right now, the last 4 years, very straightforward. There's more buyers than there is sellers. So there's not been a need for a seller to get creative. Prior to that, we did owner financing and some other stuff, but it's harder to get a seller to consider that now when they're getting so many cash offers.
Hmm. So does that mean, so if you have any given seller, are there typically multiple offers that you're handling for this seller, or is it, when I say multiple, maybe it's between one or two people that are interested in buying at any given time?
So it really depends on location and size of the business. We listed a company in Dallas I think they're doing like $5 million in sales. So it's really a sweet spot for all the buyers that are in the marketplace in a market that everybody's trying to get to. It seems all of California is moving to Texas. And so it's a really kind of a hotbed. The first day we went to market, we had 95 NDAs signed. Now that doesn't mean 95 offers, but 95 people raised their hand that day and said they're interested in business and signed an NDA and gave us proof of funds. So there's certainly strong buyer demand, and it's going to be based on size, location. We have others that we've had on the market for a few months that may be in a smaller area, smaller market, maybe be a smaller business where the owner does a lot of the work. And so those take longer to sell, and then we spend more money and work on promotion, advertising, trying to find the right buyer.
Are there pocket listings, kind of like in the housing real estate market, like where is that a thing in business brokerage?
You know, so I have some buyers who I've sold a lot of companies. I have one company that I've sold 30 companies to. And so I know where it'll be a good fit for them, and what they're interested in buying. But if I'm representing the seller in the transaction, I believe my job is to get as many eyes on the business as we can and let the seller make that decision. So even though I've sold them a lot of businesses, so they may get it the day before everybody else does to take a look and see if they've got an interest. But at the end of the day, it's up to that seller to make the final decision. I think it's not fair for me to say, here's who should buy your business.
Mhm.
Because once again, if it's priced properly and it's been built properly, there's going to be other buyer interest.
Is there a lot of negotiating that goes on in these deals, or is it, if you're working with the seller, I imagine you're helping them arrive at the proper list price? Do buyers come in and try to haggle on that, or is it different, than like going to buy a car where you can say, "Hey, what's the wiggle room like?"
Yeah, so everybody's looking for a deal, right? I mean, at the
Mhm.
end of the day, and I think I hate to say this against my own industry, but a lot of brokers don't put in the work to list a business where it should be.
Mhm.
Where they'll meet with a seller and the seller says, I want 2 million. The business could be worth 1 million. And they say, okay, let's list it at 2 million. So as a result, I think the industry accepts more haggling than it should be, but I think it's self-created. I think that listings that are listed way overpriced cause that to happen. Do we get lower offers than we'll accept? Sure we do. Um, but there's no requirement to make an offer, right? You can offer whatever you want to. Does that mean they're going to negotiate and accept it? No, it doesn't. Not on a good business. There's no need to. The reality is IBBA, International Business Broker Association, did a study, and only 20% of the businesses listed actually sell. So 80% either close down or they keep running or whatever the case may be. So,
Wow.
so the market overall, now that's not necessarily heating and air companies. That's the business world as a whole. There's a lot of businesses that don't sell, and part of that is because they're priced wrong. They shouldn't have been priced where they are. Part of that is they don't have a good business. They don't have a sellable business, or they've got bad numbers, and you can't get financing on it. So there's all sorts of things that weigh into that. But because of those numbers, there's probably more haggling that takes place because it needs to sometimes.
What does a typical buyer look like of the businesses you help sell? Are they coming in to fully operate the business? Are they kind of like a, I know you said private equity usually is in the larger pool for larger companies, but are they like owner operators coming in, or are they folks that I'm buying this business as a kind of like a portfolio play, and then we're going to use the people that already run the business on the day to day? What does your average buyer look like?
Crazy. It's a little bit of everything. So I've got some consolidators or private equity groups that buy a lot of companies from me. I have smaller people who I have one guy who's bought 3 companies from me and 5 years ago was in banking. And now he's doing his own little kind of roll up where he's buying in certain markets with the goal to build to sell one day. I have kids whose parents sold their business to private equity and the kids didn't like working there and now they're buying their own companies. I have other people who are in one town and want to expand to another town, and they're buying. And I have, dentists who decide their parents were in the trades and they want to get in the trades themselves, and they're buying it. So really, all across the board, a little bit of everything, everywhere. Yeah, when I first started 6 years ago, I think the first year everything I sold was mom and pops buying other mom and pops. Right, they were just expanding through acquisition. And then
Mhm.
it went for 2 years that almost every deal I did was private equity or consolidator backed. And
Wow.
then now it seems to be shifting back to a little bit of everything.
Okay, interesting. So now I'm curious, what does a timeline look like for a business deal? Like I know with a house, it's usually, you're in and out within 30 days or so. I'm only familiar with the real estate market. What does it look like in buying a business? Is this a 1 month process, or is this like a 10-month process?
So, well, it's broken down into 2 different sections. It's finding the buyer and getting under contract. And that's going to depend on the size of the business, location, how attractive it is. That could take a week. That could take a year. We just don't. That's the hard part to figure out. Once we're under contract, typically closing is 60 days, 60 to 90. They're
Okay.
using SBA financings, depending on the bank, that could slow it down a little bit. You'll get a due diligence period, right? So kind of like a home inspection, but they'll get a due diligence period to go through the numbers, look at the bank statements, look at tax returns, look at P&Ls to make sure that what was presented in the offering is really what they're buying. And to get things lined up. The downside in selling a business is we're selling operating businesses. So if we close on Monday on Tuesday morning, there's a new owner, new staff, new insurance, new bank accounts, new everything, and we're rolling, right? We don't close it down for a week and say, okay, we're not going to do anything but to get everything lined up. You've got to get titles transferred over, insurance on those vehicles, health insurance in place. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes to get done. So the day of closing, but everything goes off without a hitch. Phone system switched over, water switched over at the office, cable, internet. There's a lot of moving parts, and so we have all that's done during that due diligence period. So when we hit the ground running, there's as little blips as possible.
All right, as we round out this episode, I'm sure there's got to be a few listeners out there who are possibly looking to get into business brokerage. I'm curious, and maybe they're curious right now. What are the earning potentials like per deal when it comes to being a business broker? What does that look like in terms of the yeah your earning potential? What does that look like for business brokerage?
Unlimited. So there's brokers who get in the industry similar to real estate, and they've retired and they do a deal a year, and they focus on $1 million deals where they could make potentially $100,000 in commission and do one a year. There's some that do two a year. There's some that sell. When I first became a broker and didn't know what I was doing, I was selling $50,000 coffee shops, and it's commission, right? So it's negotiated commission depending on what you negotiate with your client. So if you do a lot of $50,000 coffee shops, you can make a lot of money. And if you don't only do a few, you don't make any money. And so my first year as a broker, I think I made $7,000. Um, so to say I wasn't feeding my family was an understatement. Because it takes time, right? You've got to get in and build your brand and get listings and get them sold and learn the business. But then I know brokers who only sell companies over $20 million. And you sell a company at $20 million, no matter what the commission percentage is, you're doing pretty well. Um,
Hmm.
and so really the earnings opportunities are unlimited. Based on the business, the size. You can only do so many deals as a person. So then, do you hire a team? And so now do you have people working for you, or a lot of them do it as solar operating is operating out of their home. I have staff, an office, overhead, so my numbers are going to be different than that solar operator. And for years, I was a solar operator operating from my kitchen table. And but you do 20 deals a year, you're doing two a month. It's hard, especially nationwide. I'm in Florida. I was in Atlanta yesterday. I was in Baltimore Monday. I was in Baltimore last Thursday. Uh, Texas earlier in the week. I live on a plane doing the deal volume that we're doing and traveling the way that I travel. And so as a result, I have staff that helps me with certain.
Yeah, so traveling to closings, I imagine.
Not always. Sometimes it's a listing. It really depends on the
Okay.
deal and what the client's looking for. Sometimes yesterday was a buyer seller meeting in Atlanta. So I'm 4.5 hours from Atlanta. So I drove to Atlanta yesterday afternoon, got home at 1 o'clock this morning, and here we are.
Oh wow.
So,
Okay.
it's like anything else. It's how hard are you willing to work? A lot
Yeah.
of people, a lot of people, it's a part-time deal, and if they sell a decent business, they make a little bit of money, and it's good for them. Other people, want to make a couple $1 million a year, and they have to put in the work to do that. So it just really depends.
And it doesn't sound like this is like real estate agents where there's a typical fixed type of commission. Are your commissions? Is there an average percentage commission, or is it negotiated? Is there a number you always come in at, and then the
So it's
seller
really
they're
it's
free to
really
negotiate?
negotiated, and as the industry, what we typically see as the deal gets bigger, the percentage goes down. Is what is typical. What you charge for $100,000 business from a commission standpoint is different than what you charge for a $10 million business.
Hmm.
And so, everybody charges differently. So I can only talk to what I do. And so for me, up to $1 million sale price, we charge 10%. Um, and then it goes down kind of quickly from there. And so, but selling a company for $800,000 is way more work for me than selling a company for $20 million. Because
Really?
for a $20 million company, I could email it to 10 buyers and we'd have buyers competing right away. An
Hmm.
$800,000 company, we do direct mail, we do online advertisement, we do website stuff, we do social media marketing. So we're having to do everything we can to get eyes on it. And so I'm spending more money per listing on a smaller listing than I am on a larger listing.
Right. So if you're going to be making 80K off of off of an 800,000 sale roughly, you've got additional overhead that you've got to put into play in order to get that listing sold. So that obviously cuts into your margin.
Yeah, and meetings, right? If I, we do buyer seller phone calls, and my day is full of those. Well, on a $20 million company, I may have to do two phone calls. On an $800,000 company, I may have to do 50 phone calls. So I have 50 hours just in phone calls on it. And they may want to meet in person, so I may have to fly there. And I'll have airfare and hotel and travel and meetings and lunch and all those things included. So it's just it's more work and more expense to promote it. And those are the people, in my opinion, that need my help, right? If you're doing 25, $30 million, you're probably pretty savvy, and you probably answer one of the calls that are calling to offer you to buy your business, and you can probably put a deal together. If you're doing $2 million a year in sales, making $300,000 a year, you've got a great business, but you probably have never sold a business. You probably don't understand about rolling equity and about second bite of the apple and all the things that they're going to be talking about, and what risks are there, and reps and warranties in the contract. There's other parts that are there, so you're really going to need more handholding, and that takes time, and as a result, it costs money for me to do it. So yeah.
All right. Well, Patrick, man, I don't want to keep you much longer. I could keep going, but this has been a kind of a fascinating popping the lid of business brokerage and buying and selling businesses. I think this is for at least for me, it's pretty fascinating. I'm sure we have plenty of listeners out there who are into this or maybe even looking to get into business brokerage. So I want to make sure that anybody out there in our audience today who wants to either get in contact with you, maybe they have some questions, or maybe they have a business that they're looking to buy or sell. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so obviously you can just call my office directly, 850-669-2498, 850-669-2498. But I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm on Facebook a lot. I've got a YouTube channel. Obviously, my website is a great resource. We publish articles, typically 4 articles a month on there. We've got videos on there. We've got the ability to get evaluation done on there. So I'm pretty active in any of those spaces. Find out whatever media works best for you, and certainly reach out. I'm happy to help any way I can.
All right, wonderful. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your time and knowledge. This has been fantastic, and we wish you nothing but the best throughout the rest of 2025 and beyond.
Thank you so much for having me on. I had a fantastic time, Brian.
My pleasure.